Welcome back. You have voted and we have a schedule. And our first speaker is Simon Kaleschke. He's a web developer and software architect. And he would like to look into code that he really hates with you together. So it's going to be some kind of mob programming session. So be prepared to contribute. So, Simon, stage is yours.
Because I'm nervous when people are looking. This worked. Okay. Hi. Last year I held a talk about metaprogramming, and I didn't even tell you what my name was. So let me be more diligent this time. My name is Simon. My GitHub handle is Cheapmon, which is a bad pun on my name. And we have one open source contribution for a Rails plugin. And don't be worried by my contribution graph. It's basically just me editing my dot files all day. I work with Schnelle. We do Personalmarketing. I don't know the English word. And we have this nice team page with fun graphics. You might have seen some of these people here. Here's me with a Rubik's Cube. Yeah, well, that's about it. I said I just want to do mob programming. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a talk because I didn't want to prepare slides the evening before. So I did the simplest thing I could think of. I just thought of some code that I hated. And let me be clear, I haven't prepared a refactoring path for it at all. So it's all just us as a hive mind thinking about it. We'll see how far we get. There's a gist, because this doesn't fit on a single screen. There's a short link I'm going to show you now. It's unconf.simes.eu. If you want to hack on it, you can go there and look at it and submit comments, and we'll have a nice time just thinking about that code that I like and the code that I don't like. Let's lay some very simple ground rules. By the way, is this big enough? I'll go 2 more. We'll not use any additional gems because that would be cheating. We want to improve the code as is. Second point, I use Rufo, which is a Ruby formatter, and we're not going to talk about indenting or quotes or stuff like that. I don't think that's productive for this use case. I cannot pay any of you consulting fees. If this ends up in our production, I'm sorry, I'm not authorized to do that. Yeah, that's our ground rules. Let's start looking at this code. This is actual real production code that I recently had to look at because it landed in our bug tracker, and it's still there. I looked at the code, I understood half of it, and then I closed it and did all the other tickets. So let's see up here. There's a simple explanation of what this code is meant to do. It takes a YouTube link with the ID on the end and it turns it into an embedded YouTube link. Should be simple enough, I guess. So there's several parts to this. There's a bunch of constants up here, nested Ruby hash. There's 2 parts to this. For some reason, Vimeo is also there. I haven't understood it quite yet. But we check for valid YouTube URLs or valid Vimeo URLs. Now we have 2 functions that basically look the same, which I don't like. And then down here we have the end boss of return-based programming, which is just, it's 9 lines of code, 3 comments, and 5 return statements. Yeah. So let's see here. Maybe we can start off with things we don't like about this code. And then we can go and start to talk about how we can improve it, what we would do. I'll can do some live editing, but I'm not sure that we'll get very far with that. You've seen me typing. So I'll start. I look at this code and I feel like there's too many constants for some reason. I don't like seeing that many constants. This here looks like it belongs in a config file. It's just like defined inline in the Ruby file, which is fine, I guess. We have frozen string literal true at the top and string concatenation at the bottom, which means we're wasting time, if I remember correctly. And we create regexes on the fly everywhere. We have code duplication in this part is valid YouTube URL and is valid Vimeo URL. And what the heck is this line? It's double the size of all the other lines and I don't understand it. But hey, it works. Let me be clear, I did not write this code. But I could have written this code like 10 years ago. So you can make fun of me, just pretend I did this and we're improving together. Okay. So, any ideas? Yeah, we have people with microphones coming to you. Please wait.
Are there any tests for this?
I haven't brought them, I think. This is purely an academical exercise in that regard. Sorry.
Yeah, in this code, it's unclear what is the entry point. Is all of those methods are used or just the last one? And if it is just the last one, why is it at the bottom?
Yeah. I think you're right. I actually don't know if all those 4 are actually public API. My guess is that only the bottom one would be. So we can just go ahead and put them where they belong. Better? Good. Yeah.
Few ideas I can see from start. So do we really need Vimeo if we are working with YouTube? So we should just clear out everything.
I think for this exercise, we might as well skip Vimeo, yeah.
Okay.
And
I needed returns at the end of each method, and there's no like definition with private and public methods.
can you repeat that, please?
There's no separation in private and public. If we are calling only one method, that it should be sorry.
We just did that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And regex is too much, right? Regex new. That's all I can see right now.
Yeah.
There might be a problem with the concept. This method get embedded video URLs. It doesn't treat URL as URL. It treats it as a string, which is a source of bugs, which really, really hard to debug sometimes. So URLs are not strings. They look like strings, but they are special strings. So they have a formatting and so on. So this embed plus URI, and then you get the piece of path. This usually leads to some problems. So as an idea, so this is URL. Why not to get input, parse it as URL, then you have pieces like host, path, query, and so on, and then just deal with it as URL. You could check whether it's Vimeo or not. Without regex, you just check if the host is YouTube or Vimeo. The same with path. A little bit trickier than just host, but...
Yeah, I agree. I looked at this and there's like, there is URI parsing, but there's also string concatenation with URI in there. And I also thought, yeah, you can just use a parser, get the host and the path and the other query parameters and put that together in one place.
Usually the advice would be, if you deal with URLs, you parse them using parser, because parser knows how to do this properly. Do any mutations, and then encode this as URL again, using encoder, like URL encoder.
I think it's URI.parse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have one here. Oh, and back there.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. I don't know if we have decided to skip Vimeo or not, but if we want to keep YouTube and Vimeo, I would suggest to use the strategy pattern to create a subclass for YouTube, a class for YouTube, a class for Vimeo, and just call in these classes to do special handling. So extract that into a class of its own.
Yes, I would agree. If it was just the YouTube case, we could just leave it in the one module. But since we're already doing two different services and we're handling the URLs differently, right now that is happening with ifs, a lot of ifs. It would be good to have just two super small, simple classes. You can basically do matching if it's one of those URLs, and then you can do the adjusting of the URL based on the ID, which we've...
Yeah, we just do one match, then we instantiate a strategy class for Vimeo or for YouTube, and then we can call into that class to do the actual handling.
The strategy pattern, it's called?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that's the strategy pattern. You have a superclass or a class that has to deal with different things, and you can extract all the if statements to only one if statement, where you decide, okay, which strategy do I use? Do I use the YouTube strategy or the Vimeo strategy? You instantiate a class or an object of the right class, and all the rest is methods on that class. But all the classes, of course, have the same methods. I think it's just one method here. So get embedded video URL, either for YouTube or for Vimeo, and yeah. And then the class can do special handling if, for example, that's extremely different. I haven't completely understood that in this case. So for YouTube, for example, we have a regular and an embedded case that we don't have for Vimeo, so that will be only implemented in the YouTube strategy and not in the Vimeo strategy.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, who's next?
One suggestion is we could use pattern matching in the last one from Ruby 3. It's not, this would not like the other ones that use a different pattern, just would make it a little bit more readable. Instead of have all these returns, you would have just, okay, if this condition matches, I have this, this, and this. Would be the same logic, but a little bit more readable.
You mean here?
Yes.
Okay.
The second thing is I don't really like that we use get and is instead of interrogation.
Yeah, it's like this person heard of guard clauses and decided to use them everywhere.
Yes, pattern matching is something more new in Ruby 3, but I think he would apply very good. The other thing is I would not use is valid video URL, I would just use valid video URL interrogation, small stuff.
Maybe. May I? Yeah, it seems I can. Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, cool. Sorry. It seems that what we are trying to do is validate the URL, then we are extracting, or not, but we probably should, extract the video ID and then return back the embedded part. But it's not very obvious from the code, so maybe splitting the method to something like valid, then figure out the ID, and then return that back for the short embed URL for the short or just the ID would be enough, and it would be very clear what we are trying to do. Just an idea.
Yeah. Okay. Still have a lot of people wanting to comment. Nice.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same, but in different words. One of the sorry for this. Yeah, one of the things that is a problem in the code I see a lot is that people tend to put all the code into one method, and the method spans on multiple layers of abstraction. And if we would bring this method into a single level of abstraction, which will be exactly like get a video ID, return nothing if we couldn't do this, and then build an embed URL, that would be much clearer and much more readable. And then the extraction code, which is the the most complex part here, I guess. We can even extract it into a separate class. And the second thing I was going to say is that from the module name, which is video URL helper, I assume that this is a part of, this is something that is used in the views, but the knowledge about how to do this stuff with the YouTube URLs, it's really a domain knowledge, and maybe it should be in the application layer instead.
That's a good point, actually. I think this is originally in a Rails helper, but that Rails helper is then included in a model, which is not the right way. Either it's a model concern or it goes somewhere completely else, but it does not belong in a helper in that way. But maybe the person wanted to reuse it in the view and on the model for some reason. I can't quite know that right now. But yeah, I like the idea of having like extra classes for embedded case and stuff, if I understood you correctly. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Also, my comment is kind of related to naming. So this kind of video URL helper implies that it would be used as a sort of a utility class or something like that. And usually they're used as kind of those public methods should be static, probably, if it's used that way. But the only way to use these helpers is actually to include all of this mess into some of your classes, and you only need the one method here, which is, I would say, very suboptimal. So probably that should be changed somehow. It's a pure utility. Maybe we could just, if we are leaving it as a utility, then maybe we would either convert in this class this method to a static one, so we can use it that way and not mix in all that stuff.
Yeah, I think I agree that it would be better to not include all that code, including the constants, into every class where it's used. It doesn't really make sense in that way. You could declare this as a static method with self-dot and then just call that specific method. Would be interesting to see how that works together with the whole class idea and composition that we talked about. Yeah.
I would probably throw away about 73% of the whole class. If you scroll up to the first two lines, what you have to do is basically just replace the watch v equals and replace it with an embed. I think you can do that very easily with a gsub. So maybe you can just make a method with one line, and if it's already embedded, yeah, well, the method doesn't do anything and returns the original string, so it should be fine too.
Yeah, you could use a gsub, of course. I don't feel comfortable doing stuff like that to URLs for some reason.
It's just a minor detail, but for building the URIs, I would use URI ::HTTP class. It has a build method. In the same sentiment that we shouldn't just manipulate strings and handle them as URIs later. Yeah.
I actually never heard of that class.
Yeah, I think it should be standard library. I hope so.
URI HTTP. Like this? And the method was called build? Okay, interesting. Cannot comment on that. But looks good. Yeah, who's next?
You said you don't feel comfortable about deleting the whole class. There's something called tests that you can put in that give you some confidence. Maybe then you can remove it.
You really need to have a discussion with the guy that wants to keep everything as a URI. And we'll see. Yeah, I think it's a valid approach if you need it simple like that. We haven't talked about all the nasty cases that can happen where people don't input the right URL type. which is actually what happened in our bug tracker a lot, where we had like a caret at the start for some reason, because people were copying it blindly from somewhere. I think
yeah. So this is Rails application, right?
this belongs to a Rails application, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so my first suggestion will be like it was mentioned before in the strategy. So if you move this to a separate model without like database implementation, you can move the whole validation up in there. So we just need to call create a new model with the URL, check if it's valid. In, for example, in validate, something like just validate question mark private method, and it will be responsible for the whole validation before like running the whole business logic. So like extract regex, everything else, constants, that will be a separate class. The second one, you're already using URI parse in line 6, as mentioned in to-do. So you can move it out as an, how it's called, ID something, YouTube ID. So you can extract it to a method and memorize it, sorry. Like, and reuse it everywhere it can be used.
This is where the ID is actually extracted. And you mean extract that and do that first?
To a method, yeah, and just name it accordingly. The same with the regex. So every check with the regex, like just does match something and extract it there. And if we don't have like an hour to do it, like, so something like that. Thank you.
Sorry for the mistake. So I just wanted to say that many errors that you have in bug tracker when the input has some extra characters or encoded incorrectly, they could be avoided if the input would be treated as URL. So parser will explode right away if it's something unparsable, something which does not look like URL, and you don't have these cases anymore. So there is no need to be overprotective like in this. In the method when you have a bunch of returns and checks whether this thing looks like URL that you need or not.
Yeah, I think I agree that it would be good to parse it right away. Right now it breaks somewhere in the middle, sometimes at cgi.parse, I think, and it's not always clear if you look at the stack trace the first time what's actually happening.
Continue with the idea of simplification. You can simplify both patterns into one for Vimeo and one for YouTube, and just use replace to find the embed. Like literally those 3 patterns can just be one with regex. And the second one, if you don't want to do more regex arithmetics, can also be 1 or 2, and literally using replace to change the ID, and then you have the embed is 3 lines of code, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, based on the fact that the method is called get embedded video URL, and you have the guard that tries to figure out if it already is an embedded URL, it looks like this view helper is only used to correct wrongly input data from the database. So, why is it done before you write it into the database, so the embedded URL is always stored in the database? So you don't have to fix it every time you want to render something.
Do you mean like in the front end, or?
No, like in some place it looks like there's some data you're fetching from a database, and which is potentially maybe sometimes already an embedded URL because you have the guard method that's just checking that. And if it's already an embedded URL, it's fine, let's return that one. Oh, it's not an embedded URL, let's fix the error we have in our database. So why don't you fix your data?
I'm not sure if I can answer that correctly. I have a guess that we just wanted to avoid salespeople complaining about too many error messages or something.
But you could do that like convert it to an embedded URL in the moment where you want to write it to the database. And you have to only to do it once.
Oh, so your interpretation is that this is only run on the model that's already there, and the database sometimes has the wrong URL. That's what you're saying.
That's my guess based on the method name and the content, yes.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Yeah, adding to this, it looks like this class has a lot of complexity that comes from the fact that there's a huge variability on the input parameter, and you told that this is a part of the model. So I guess that you are either storing the video URL in some not standard way, standard form. And what you really should do to improve this code is to extract the ID at the moment where you create the model, and only build the embed URL when it's needed. And then you will not have to have this class at all.
Yeah, okay.
One suggestion I have is something like the strategy pattern, but maybe a bit less complicated here. And that would also follow the open-close principle. I'm not a believer you need to do it everywhere, but maybe here's a good case because you can have more cases in the future, not only YouTube, Vimeo, more cases. So you could create like a constant with a map of regular expressions and functions. So you could iterate in get embedded video URL, stock this map, and in case that one of the keys matches, then just call the function that is as a value of this key in the map. So you would have like this open-close principle followed.
So do you mean mapping it to a function or mapping it to a class?
Mapping to a function. Of course, you could also do a class, but I think here it's enough to just have a mapping between a regular expression and a function.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have much time anymore, so this will be the last comment, unfortunately.
So what this thing does, I'm pretty sure that this is like for the rich text editor. You click a button, it opens a pop-up, you put in the URL, paste in anything you want, and it makes the embed URL for you. There is no database model, you cannot put this into model, there is no storage of one field. So really we only want to do this conversion from line 3 to line 2, if that's the right order.
A relative, yes.
Yes, so if we would have tests, I think this code wouldn't be even that bad if it does what it should be doing. The main problem is the main method on line 29, which is just too complicated to grasp. So if we were to structure what it actually does, like first pick out what kind of URL it is, see if it's valid, and then do the replacement and then return it. If you just have a more step-by-step approach of this main method to make it more readable, it might be totally fine. I wouldn't do any strategy pattern because this is one class. It should be as simple as that. Once you have another 2 classes in the code, you would need to also understand them, which wastes time. So I think there's still a lot to be done here, but it's not that bad, I would say.
Okay, yeah, so we have very different approaches. Some people want to add more classes, some people say just keep it simple in that regard. I think you could also define those classes inline in the same file and maybe make it more findable, the implementation, but it's interesting to see those different tastes here. I don't know if I have a strong opinion on either of those. Okay, so that was the last comment. We are out of time, so I can't show you the code that I like, unfortunately. So no boasting for me today. Just, I don't know, I'll make 2 more suggestions because this looks like a Java method definition. Just get rid of the get, and instead of is valid URL, just call it valid video URL with a question mark in the end because that's more Railsy. Yeah. I think that's it. Thank you very much for participating. I think we all learned a lot.